You're watching Capital Connection from the Illinois State Capitol.
The recent surge in crime in Chicago has one particularly interesting element. A rise in carjackings has police and residents particularly concerned. Joining us now is a House Democrat with some ideas to curb this recent rash of carjackings. House Democrat Marcus Evans from the southeast side of Chicago. Good to have you with us.
Thank you so much. It's good to be here, Mark.
First of all, this has been a really interesting time this year. We've got the coronavirus, the business closures, so much of what we've come to know in life being disrupted. On top of that, the summer of social unrest we saw, the protests, and then there was the retail theft. Do you see some connection between all of that leading up to this carjacking surge, or how do you describe it?
Yeah, well, I see a frustration amongst the masses of citizens with their situations, but there's never one solution to the problem because I think that the humans and individuals in the society are complex, and people have different reasons why they participate in activities. So I think we got to analyze all of the different reasons, but I think those problems definitely have created some of the things that we're dealing with.
You filed a bill recently in Springfield here to ban the sale of video games like Grand Theft Auto. What's the thinking there?
Yeah, and it wasn't to specifically target one game. It's just that game would fit the description of a game that I'm describing. Should we have video games in which you go around and attack people, kill people, and steal cars? Does that normalize the behavior for teenagers? Not for people like me and you. I mean, we're well-developed adults, but it's really about how does it impact young people and what are our standards? I think we live in a society where will we have a game where we have a slavery game, where we have anti-Semitic games, where we have domestic violence games? At what point, what do we accept in a society? Because if you look at the insurgents that happened at the Capitol, we don't accept that. And I think as a society, we should definitely think about the things that we accept and we don't accept. Carjacking is a very, very violent crime. It must stop. It's terrorizing people in my community. So I'm trying to think about ideas to connect to those who are carjacking and get them to stop doing it.
It's just an interesting idea because where do you then draw the line? It sort of gets into this creative space where there's creative license. If you look at, there are some, I mean, we've had, our country has had debates like this. I mean, a big time in the 80s with the moral majority and what kind of music or entertainment or movies are out there that might excite certain passions or imaginations. It seems like you're touching on a similar rail here.
No, what only thing I would say is those folks and those conversations back then yielded what we have today. We have freedom of expression with limitations. We don't have porn on Channel 7, so we don't just let anything happen, right? We still have limitations and standards and boundaries in our society, even amongst what we have now. There's always censorship, even on social media. And I think we want that. We don't want to project certain things because we don't want the result of that. We don't want to normalize domestic violence, so we don't support domestic violence. We were now normalizing women's rights. A generation prior, women's rights were not prioritized. So even this Black Lives Matter movement is a reflection of the growth of our generation. So I love, clearly as an African American, I'm 36 years old. I grew up with video games. I grew up in a society of liberalism, and I'm a liberal person. But we always got to decide what in which we will accept. Right now, carjacking is a very, very serious, dangerous crime. You think about carjacking, it is a financial crime. Carjacking is a emotional crime, and it's also a crime of deviancy. And we got to stop it. And we have to make sure that it's clear that we don't support it in any way. And I think the video game could potentially be skewing that view for some young folks, or maybe not. That's why you file bills and we have these discussions.
Sure, and we'll watch that debate as it unfolds, should that occur here in Springfield. One of the things that has perplexed law enforcement about this rash of carjackings is that rarely are they in pursuit of the value of the car. It's more the notoriety they can get on social media. That's my understanding, at least, is that some of this is in pursuit of individual accolades. I wonder, you sit on the board of the IHSA, the governing authority that runs high school sports in Illinois. Do you think that we would have this rash of carjackings with teenagers seeking these individual accolades or notoriety on social media if we had sports open this last year?
Yeah, I think and that gets to the point of why I filed this bill. There's never a solution. There's no omnibus, omnipresent solution to any problem. There's always different problems. Whether it's weight laws, whether it's people with cancer, some folks is hereditary, some folks is it's the environment, some folks is what they eat. So we have to have different solutions for different children. So yes, I supported getting the kids back to play sports. I'm also a high school basketball official. I'm a licensed high school basketball official. So I talked to the mayor of Chicago. We have CPS basketball to start back. Of course, throughout the state, they've already started. So basketball is important. If you're a religious person or you look to the Bible or look to any quotes of positivity, idle minds is the devil's workshop. And I believe that. I believe we have to have our children busy. But some of it is mental health. We have to also send a message to our children that this may be a game. And again, we can keep the Grand Theft Auto a violent game. But we have to send a message as adults that this is unacceptable behavior. And it must remain on the television. It must remain in the video game, because there's no reset button after you hijack somebody in real life, but there's a reset button in those games. So if we're going to have something that's dangerous or that's questionable, the message has to be clear to our young people. This is unacceptable. Like you're saying, many of these cars are being recovered. They're not even carjacking for the monetary value of the vehicle. So why are they doing it? Because maybe they believe this is acceptable behavior. So I want to bring notice that carjacking is unacceptable and it has to stop.
Mm-hmm. And we've talked at some length with many legislators, especially in the Black Caucus, after the passage of this police reform measure, the criminal justice measure. Why was this important to you personally? Some of these issues that we've discussed out here, there's a long history in our country of reacting. In the 90s, it was the crime bill. After there was a spike in crime now. And do you think that there's a similar panic, or in the minds of some policymakers today, with a recent surge in crime? It's certainly not at the levels it was back then, but some of this debate does have a lot of some raw nerves there. What issues do you see as most pressing in bringing us to where we are, passing this criminal justice and police reform measure?
Yeah, first of all, I supported the measure because if you look at it, it was about how do we improve the relationship between the community and the police. 99.9% of police officers are wonderful, but there's a small percentage of citizens who take the job of police for some deviant purpose. That is the problem. How do you root those folks out? That was a part of this bill, police accountability. How do we say we love the 99.9% of the police, but we must root out the bad police officers who choose to use the badge to terrorize Black and brown communities? That is happening. That was a part of this bill. The second piece was we want to keep criminals and bad deviant people in jail, but good people who made mistakes, we want to give them a second opportunity. That is criminal justice reform. If you do something wrong and you're a good person, give you an opportunity. But again, these terrible criminals, we're going to lock them up. Bail reform is all about that. If you're a nice poor person, you're going to stay in jail. If you're a bad rich person, you get out. That's not fair. So bail should not determine whether or not you're free to roam as a citizen, but what you did, the merits of your terrible act should determine that. And a judge can keep a good rich person in jail. That was what this bill was about. And also, again, just cleaning up some of the issues in criminal justice, forging a relationship between community and the police. I love the police. People in my community love the police, but we don't like bad police officers because they kill people and they terrorize folks.
Very interesting discussion with House Democrat Marcus Evans. Thank you for joining us. I should note, I don't know if there's a connection between your bill and Springfield, but there is a dramatic rise in the stock market on GameStop as we're recording this interview. So perhaps there's a surge before they see some favorite games go off the shelves there. I don't know if there's a connection.
Yeah, well, again, it was not my intention. I have no interest in affecting the stock market. All I want to do is positively affect my community and have people thinking. I think as elected officials, we file bills to pass them, but it's really about the discussion. We bring, and thank you so much, Mark, because we bring together thoughts. This bill may not advance, maybe people reject it, but the thought and the discussion, I think, is much more important than the actual passage of a bill, and I really believe that.
All right, Representative Evans, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. All the best to you.
We're back in just a moment. Stick around.